What's a subtle sign someone is a bad person? Story 1. Always blaming others is a good sign. I once had a boss tell me that it doesn't matter who's at fault. What matters is the solution. I always keep that in mind and notice when other people play the blame game instead of problem solving. Answer: those things aren't related beyond the platitudes your boss was using. 1. Always blaming someone else shows a lack of accountability and/or a need to find a scapegoat to avoid any possibility of repercussions. 2. Identifying someone who was at fault can help with poor performance and/or determine if there needs to be larger corrective action within a team or department. 3. Finding the solution as a group is fantastic, but again, you need all the facts. An example of 2-3 was an engineer at work messed up pretty badly, but acknowledged it, and it was determined that we didn't have automatic safeguards to prevent this issue, and that there was no training around why you shouldn't do what this engineer did. Story 2. I do think that there are many people that qualify as a bad. Almost everyone has some bad behaviors. Whether subtle or not is a matter of opinion. I guess it depends on how observant you are. They do not respect boundaries. They label people, judge people. They are not accountable. They do not treat others well, do not take others into consideration. Passive-aggressive behaviors or manipulation. Story 3. They'll use you to get gossip and information on other people without you necessarily realizing. If they've got a lot of friends in a lot of places, that's not a green flag. It's a red one. Those are sources. They'll justify looking at the social media accounts of the friends and family of the people they want gossip on the basis that they're just sleuthing and it's public-facing information. They won't see anything wrong with doing any of this. Story 4. The best way I have learned to gauge it in a short amount of time is to pay attention to how much they consider the wider ramifications of their actions, specifically on the people around them. For example, do they litter rather than keeping the trash till they can find a garbage can because it's more convenient for them? Or do they light up a cigarette around groups of people without checking to see if anyone would be bothered first? Are they polite to everyone they encounter, or just the people they need something from, i.e. staff at a store restaurant? And in that case, are they even rude to service staff too, because they technically have power over said staff, so feel no need to be kind? Things of that nature. Now, it's not foolproof, of course, and it can vary a great deal depending on different factors. Good people can sometimes be very inconsiderate, and bad can sometimes be very thoughtful and even pleasant to be around. But I have noticed that good people tend to be more conscious of the people around them in their environment, and take steps to ensure their presence is as undisruptive or pleasant as they can reasonably make it. It demonstrates they care for others and are mindful not to make anyone else's day any harder than it needs to be, because they are aware that everyone is going through their own crap in life, and they don't want to add to that if it's not necessary. Whereas bad people are a lot more self-centered, they don't care how their presence impacts others or may even intentionally be a problem because they enjoy being assholes. But like I said, it's not a perfect way to gauge it, but it's the best system I have found to make such an estimation in a very short amount of time. Hope this helps, but don't take it as gospel and trust your own judgment on people, as there is a certain amount of inherent feel you get by interacting with a person in real life, and so trusting your gut is a common piece of advice for this exact reason. Story 5. They use therapy language and euphemisms to downplay abuse. They'll put the blame on the victim and claim it's their choice, then turn the accusations back on the accuser and call them judgmental. They're the type of person who goes on long rants about moral relativism and says who's to say all the time, especially when it comes to age of consent laws. Story 6. Some subtle signs. A lot of people are posting very overt signs. 1. Push you too far out of your comfort zone and probe your vulnerabilities. 2. They will compliment you in ways that seem insulting, actually. 3. They talk about how they are always wronged and they've never wronged anybody else. But if you've been wronged, then you may be overreacting. 4. You've never heard them ever say, "I'm sorry." Story 7. Working against you in sneaky ways. Make dish for me. Here, I've prepared X cans of ingredient. Why? For you. Even though you'd only need half the pre-prepared ingredients, sneakily wanting you to do wrong so that they'd have reasons to give you shoot about it. Story 8. Lack of accountability, which translate to either drama queen behavior when requested to control or smiling in your face while they visibly disagree, and keep doing the damaging behavior. Caught a coworker red-handed and called him a liar in front of the team leader. Resulted in a very hilarious drama session. Story 9. I'm an empath. What they're really saying to you is that what they think about what you're feeling is more important than anything you can actually tell them about your own feelings. That their perception of reality is ironclad, and they don't think they need to listen to others to understand them. It's narcissistic. Story 10. They never admit their mistakes. My former roommate would always have an excuse it was someone else's fault, or circumstances beyond her control, or she didn't mean it that way. Got exhausting real quick. Story 11. Well, one, I think, is labeling people as good or bad. It shows black and white thinking, which usually means the person is critical, judgmental, or controlling in some way. But, LOL, I wouldn't say that means they're bad. But it's a red flag in general to me in terms of their effect on people. Story 12. They say more bad things behind people's backs than good things. They make you try to earn their attention. They are a serial liar. They say bad things about everyone from their past to stop you from contacting them and then finding out that they've treated everyone badly and that's why they didn't want you to contact anyone. They brag about anything, even if it means contradicting something they've already said. They steal parts of people's lives to make themselves sound more interesting. Like lying about having a dead sister called Lila when it was actually their ex-boyfriend who had a dead sister called Lila. Or like saying their entire family is Muslim when 2 weeks ago their family was Spanish and Catholic, and a year ago they were saying they were atheist and Scottish. You find out that they take secret photos of children on their phones. They don't do anything nice without an ulterior motive. If you try to have a mature discussion with them, they always paint themselves as the victim and act childish. They tell you they have an eating disorder and pretend to hide by themselves every lunchtime. But in reality, they're just chatting to someone so that they can get closer to their 11-year-old sister, and then you have to report them to the school because they wanted to work there after graduating. They get angry at you if you can't keep up with their current lies, and if you mention anything, they'll stop talking and tell you that if they eliminate themselves, it's your fault. They try to isolate you from your friend group. They have a crush on anyone who shows them any sign of attention. They have chronic jealousy. For example, pretending to be multilingual because they found out someone else was and didn't want that someone to be seen as smarter than them. But when they're called out, they just shrug and gaslight you. They always blame other people for their actions. They think people are stupider than they are. Like when you ask to see their passport to prove this week's nationality. They say they accidentally left their only passport abroad last time they were on holiday. And this is all from one person. Story 13. They mistreat servers and wait staff, especially immigrants at places they are definitely going back to. Stopped going out to eat with my own mother because of this shoot. She is also the dumbest person I've ever known, so that may contribute. Story 14. There's lots of red flags out there, but one that strikes me the most is someone who recants their help to you in order to try to control or manipulate you. This has happened to me so often that I have become hyper-independent and would rather do shoot on my own than have people repeatedly tell me all the times they lent a hand. Keep your effing hands, then. Story 15. I defer to my dog. The hair goes up on the back of her neck and she'll growl at someone showing instant dislike. It's weird, but it feels like she picks up on bad energy, for lack of a better term, and she's never been wrong. Story 16. They talk about others behind their backs. I once became really good friends with this dude who would talk crap on everyone behind their backs. We eventually had a massive falling out where I wronged him and he never forgave me. Afterward, I started to realize how subtly he would put everyone else down in a joking manner when they weren't around, among other much worse things I decided to ignore beforehand. Then I started to wonder what he'd been saying behind my back. The friends I have now talk about each other all the time, but it's always good things. I really dodged a bullet by that. Dude holding a grudge against me. Looking back on it, I think he may have been a psychopath. He's the most textbook example of manipulation through superficial charisma, combined with narcissism, lack of remorse, and lack of impulse control, unreasonable crashing out I've ever seen. Story 17. 1. They say hurtful things and call you sensitive if you get hurt. 2. They don't take accountability for their actions. 3. Their pain and problems are valid, but yours are not so important. 4. They would take your help, but if you need their help, they will never do anything. 5. They talk behind someone's back, but pretend to be nice to them. Because remember, they are probably doing the same with you when you leave the room. Always try to be with people who lift you up. This is so important. Story 18. Being mean to hotel staff or waiters. Also staring at parents with a toddler throwing a tantrum as if they're being bad parents. No, they're not enjoying themselves and would also like for the little one to behave. So stop with your condescending staring. Story 19. Dividing people into good and bad categories. People are neither good nor bad, but if you are judging others, you should call yourself bad too, so not to be a hypocrite. I've never seen anyone who classified themselves as bad, and I've seen people who eliminate people. Story 20. You said a subtle sign. Most of these answers are pretty overt signs. For me, a subtle one is when someone without mobility issues doesn't return their shopping cart and just leaves it in the way or just puts the 2 front wheels up on a parking curb. Lazy and rude. Story 21. Constant projecting. All X are all Y. Politics as identity. Always needing to be center of attention. Gray area morality. It's totally fine to steal from corporations using social media to constantly present themselves as good or moral. Bragging about reckless endangerment. Bragging about Dwiss arrests. Story 22. They've got a new best friend every couple of months. What's really happened is they've burnt through any usefulness the friend has. The friend has finally put some boundaries in place, so they've moved on to the next victim. Story 23. When they use subtle racist humor as if it was everyday speech, with no awareness of how disliked their language is towards certain races. My husband is Mexican, Native American, and I'm white. We went to visit my parents for dinner, and they had invited their next-door neighbor. He repeatedly made Mexican racist comments in an attempt to be funny. Sad to say, I did not stop him nor defend my husband. I was in absolute shock. I had only been around such blatant racism one other time in my life, and was unprepared for stopping it. Only later did I rethink on the moment of what I wished I had said so, that I could respond better in the future. My parents were also shocked and unprepared to stop him. My mom did attempt to apologize to my husband after the dinner. My mom and my husband get along well. That same neighbor later got Alzheimer's and tried to eliminate his wife. She ended up divorcing him and throwing him into a home. Turned out he hadn't been nice for a long time. Story 24. They don't know boundaries, when to leave someone alone, likes to harass, stalk, etc. A person constantly gets a group of other people involved for trying to get help from HR skip level, but instead the person gets harassed more. Story 25. If they see someone having a mental breakdown and their first instinct is to film and antagonize for content, I'm specifically referencing that guy who harassed a hotel clerk to the point of the clerk exploding, self-harming, and damaging his work computer. The camera guy was very proud of taking this man's job. Imagine your most vulnerable and humiliating moment being uploaded by a bully for points. Story 26. Very friendly and inviting at first. Then, as you start to get attached, the red flags start popping up one by one, just infrequently enough for you to still trust them. They're testing the waters to see how much shoot you'll put up with, because others have been scared away before. Story 27. Here's one that might just be personal to me. You know how you can banter with your close friends? Like, take good-natured jabs at each other and have a laugh, because you know it's not really serious and all in good fun. Now imagine having someone you just met doing that to you. A lot of us have experienced this, I think. The person who we're barely acquainted with, and they already assume they can do the jokey banter with me. Call me old-fashioned, but that sort of thing needs to be earned. Anyone who jumps quickly to that stage with me flags themselves up as being a bad person because it shows a lack of boundaries or respect for others. Story 28. As a teacher, I'm always trying to instill this in my classes. I don't want to hear excuses. Take responsibility. Say, sorry, my bad, won't happen again, and we can just move on. I dislike it when kids say, I didn't do anything. Just my pet peeve. Story 29. To some extent, I disagree with the I'm misunderstood part. I say that semi-regularly, but it's important to note I'm autistic and often get told I'm being rude when I'm doing my absolute best to strike up a friendly conversation. I learned my social skills by mimicking them, so I talk to people like they talk to other people me, and still it seems like I'm getting shot down for no reason. Albeit if someone's saying that whilst also acting majorly problematic, I'd agree 100. Story 30. I don't think this is black and white 100 of the time. Almost always true. But if I had ever gone my entire life without anyone ever recognizing me as a good and decent person and the good things I did, eventually it would probably piss me off enough that I would feel the need to make sure everyone knew what I did. Truly good people certainly don't need recognition for every good thing they do, but everyone needs to be recognized occasionally or they will eventually demand it. Story 31. Man, I really have problems with people who are like this, especially when my reaction isn't to laugh in response to what they have done and they do it again. I'm a serious person. I don't choose to be serious. That's just my personality. I have a sense of humor, but poking the bear kind of humor is lost on me. Story 32. It's just a joke, sheesh. Is a very quick way for me to block your jerk. Yes, you randomly deciding to insult me and attack me repeatedly is totally a joke. It was very funny. Now get the fudge out of my sight, you fudge loser. Story 33. Those things aren't related beyond the platitudes your boss was using. 1. Always blaming someone else shows a lack of accountability and/or a need to find a scapegoat to avoid any possibility of repercussions. 2. Identifying someone who was at fault can help with poor performance and/or determine if there needs to be larger corrective action within a team or department. 3. Finding the solution as a group is fantastic, but again, you need all the facts. An example of 2-3 was an engineer at work messed up pretty badly, but acknowledged it, and it was determined that we didn't have automatic safeguards to prevent this issue and that there was no training around why you shouldn't do what this engineer did. Story 34. You might want to add constantly and doesn't care about the environment, as I am sure literally everyone littered once or twice or randomly in their lives, and I did too when I was a stupid kid, but I choose to slowly improve myself by not littering and use a dustbin whenever I see one. And no, I will never believe anyone in the world who said they have never littered stuff in their lives and preach about how they dislike littering. Story 35. Our dog avoids me like the plague. I have pretty bad anxiety with dogs due to issues as a kid, so I imagine that's putting him off. The cats are good with me, at least. On a side note, once encountered a dog while waiting for my therapy app. He was unaccompanied in the waiting room and had his head in my lap, wouldn't leave. Anxiety was awful. The therapist came out and said, "Oh, this a therapy dog. He's so helpful with people with anxiety." Poor boy was trying to help while making it worse at the same time, lol. Story 36. I actually disagree with this. I would say my mother is abusive and not a good person. The dog loves her, like obsessed with her and snappy, and bites everyone else despite my mother regularly yelling at her. It was actually originally my sister's dog. She saved up and bought her at around 18 whilst still living with my parents. My mom constantly manipulated the situation to make the dog like her more. For example, she wouldn't let my sister keep her in her room, but the dog could sleep in my mom's. The dog still lives with my mom since my sister moved out, but my sister still goes back to walk her, groom her, and take her to the vet. Basically, my sister still looks after all the dog's needs, but the dog is my mother's shadow. I find it so confusing that the dog connects with my mother because she is quite verbally abusive and stressful to be around. I usually connect really well with animals, but could never quite connect with the dog, despite showing it affection and taking it on walks. Story 37. Agreed. An awful way to communicate. I can see it in their eyes nowadays. Just listening for the opening so they can flood you with their perspective. Sometimes when I catch them, I don't even finish my sentence and walk away. Took me years of practice, BTW. Story 38. When you say listening, do you mean A. Hearing the words and information and acknowledging the words were heard, or B. Doing carrying out in action what was said? I'm not a fan of people not clarifying what they mean by listening, and I just dislike people leaving their expectations ambiguous in general. Story 39. I admit that I have a big problem with the second, judging, based on things I see or hear, like others have indicated in this post. I like to tell myself that judging is part of our survival skills, but I also acknowledge that there is a limit and I've gone over it before. At least I try to keep those judgments to myself. Story 40. You know, I've heard this, but I don't think it's that black and white. Some people talk shoot about everyone. Some people talk shoot about people that they don't like. Sometimes 1 to 2 people in a workplace of 10-20. Some people had one person act shoot to them and they talk shoot one time to one person. A lot of those people won't talk shoot about just anyone, especially the one they're confiding in at the time. I'm sure this quote only refers to the talks shoot about everyone crowd though. Small percentage of people I've dealt with. Story 41. Actually, my boyfriend's greenest flag is that whenever one of us does something for the other, he's flying around telling his friends and family and being all flustered and excited about it. Bragging is not always bad. Sometimes people just want to share and get excited about the good things with PPL they care about. I also think that PPL that didn't get enough love as a child will always have the need to brag or seek praise for small things. And I don't see how that's a subtle clue about someone being a bad person at all. Story 42. This is my least favorite part about being a mentally delayed woman and being preyed on repeatedly, that people will assume this. If they're very neurodivergent, it's possible that they keep having people treat them poorly. Story 43. I used to dislike cats. Not dislike, but dislike, I suppose, because I have a tendency to seek validation. I ended up adopting an older cat a couple years ago, and now I wholly consider myself a cat person. Story 44. I've always said I dislike cats, but I don't actually dislike cats. I just prefer dogs. It's more like I don't understand and am intimidated by cats. Also, as far as animals go, I just don't think they are cute. Their bodies are mush and it freaks me out, LOL. Story 45. Completely agree. I found marrying a recovering alcoholic less scary than someone who was still trying to pretend to be completely normal. My husband is at least willing to admit he has problems and try to fix them. I was worried I'd get stuck with someone who was in denial they had any problems at all. Married for 12 years and still going. Story 46. To be clear, this isn't a guaranteed sign since A, cultures differ, and B, you never know what's going on in someone's life to potentially preoccupy one's mind. But it's definitely an interesting data point, especially if it happens often. Story 47. I was conditioned so much as a child to just do things for others that are expectations of polite society, things like holding the door open or passing something out of reach, that I don't expect people to say thank you because I see it as default behavior, not something nice, and I have to remind myself to say thank you when someone does it for me so I don't come off like a male body part. Story 48. Yep. My husband once invited a new acquaintance to our home. The guest gave me the ibby-jibbies. My 1-year-old daughter clearly didn't want to be anywhere near him either. So I kept her with me and away from him. Once he left, I told my husband we were never having him over again. My husband admitted he had also gotten bad vibes from the guy. We never had any logical reason, but I didn't need one. The fact that all of us got bad vibes was enough for me. Story 49. Hey, I feel like it depends on the circumstances. I'll never find a serious setback or failure of a friend funny. However, I am able to find the relatively minor mistakes of others humorous because I can relate to them. Story 50. P1. You shouldn't kick babies. P2. What, so everyone you dislike is a baby kicker to you? P1. No, but if you kick babies, you are a baby kicker. Happens a lot on this site for some reason, especially with political topics. Story 51. Need someone who can handle me. Right. That means they lack self-control and probably common courtesy, and their behavior reflects that. Oh, you need to be handled like an animal? Like an out-of-control beast where they come with one of those neck loop things on the end of a long pole to wrangle it? No thanks.